A young man joins his family at a lakeside cottage where he reconnects with a childhood friend who's grown into a beautiful woman. However, his attempts to impress her might lead him to his downfall. Bastien and his family drive up to the countryside to spend the summer at a friend's lakeside cottage. Upon arriving, they're confused to find that no one's around and the power is out. Still, they get settled, and the parents even take a dip at the lake despite the evening darkness. A storm brews not long after their arrival, so the family later sleeps through the rain. In the middle of the night, Bastien wakes up to find a shadowy figure of a young woman in front of him. The figure then settles in the bed next to his, and Bastien drifts back to sleep. In the morning, he finds that his mother's best friend and the cottage owner, Louise, has returned. As they prepare breakfast, Bastien asks his mother, Violette, for his gaming console, so she points him to the piano where she left it. The young man then gets distracted by the piano while his little brother, Titi, gets scolded for eating chips before breakfast. Louise then asks her daughter, Chloe, if she woke the brothers up last night, but the young woman just complains about the boys being in her bedroom. She then heads back to her room, but her mother orders her to take the brothers to the port, even threatening to confiscate her phone if she doesn't. With no choice, Chloe does as she's told. While Titi plays on the lakeside, Bastien watches Chloe enjoy the sun. His brother then shows him the rocks that he collected, and Bastien urges him to collect more, claiming that they can sell them. After his brother leaves, Bastien offers Chloe a drink. However, she confronts him about lying to Titi to make him leave him alone. She then asks if he has a phone already, and he says that he'll get one on his next birthday. The young man then returns to his spot on the lakeside while Chloe removes her clothes and jumps into the water. She invites him to join her, and Bastien awkwardly walks into the water while keeping his clothes on. He decides not to swim after all, so Chloe teases that he's afraid of the ghost. The confused look on his face reveals that he doesn't know the legend, so Chloe recounts how years ago, a kid died in the lake. Bastien then insists that he just doesn't like to swim, explaining that he nearly drowned years ago. Chloe, however, is interested in the sensation of drowning. Suddenly, the woman goes underwater. At sundown, Chloe's lying down in the middle of the road. The brothers then approach her, showing her the photos they took of her in that spot. However, the woman complains that she didn't look dead enough. The next day, the two families ride a speedboat across the lake, though Bastien can't help but watch Chloe throughout the trip. They soon arrive at the house of Louise's new boyfriend, Brian. When asked how the women knew each other, Louise and Violette explain that their mothers were best friends, thus they grew up together. As the adults catch up, the kids watch a show until Chloe invites Bastien to do something else. She takes him to a pond up the hill where she shares with him a bottle of wine she took from Brian's house. Chloe then asks him to touch hands with her, allowing them to compare how hers is smaller than his despite the woman being older. She also tells him to touch her fingers, noting how they're cold as if she's dead. Bastien laughs at how she thinks of weird things, so she wonders if he doesn't think of such things too. He admits that he does, and as an example, he shares how he knows a person can't bite themselves until they bleed because the pain will make them stop. With this in mind, Chloe dares herself to do so, but gets interrupted when her friend Stan arrives and introduces her to his new friend Oliver. The men start discussing Chloe's recent breakup, but they don't feel comfortable talking about it around Bastien. With that, they invite the woman to go elsewhere. Despite this, Chloe invites Bastien to follow them. The group treks the woods where Oliver reveals that he's Brian's son. This leads the conversation into Brian and Louise's relationship, where Stan wonders how intimate they've gone. As they reach the lake, Stan takes a dive while Chloe warns Oliver that her mother will probably break up with his father since she's never had a serious relationship in a while. Oliver wishes that they'd stay together since he actually likes Louise. Suddenly, Stan yelps and rushes out of the water. He claims that he felt something grab his ankle in the water, thinking it was a ghost. However, his friends think he's just tricking them. Stan dares them to get into the water if they don't believe him. With Chloe and Oliver deciding to join him, Bastien chooses to head back to the cottage instead, not wanting to feel left out. Alone, he treks the woods when he suddenly hears a voice somewhere. Not seeing anyone around, Bastien quickens his pace, only for Chloe to jump on him, scaring him. She decides to go back home with him instead, so the two share her wine bottle together as they make their way back. Upon arriving at the cottage, Bastien starts feeling sick from the liquor, so Chloe helps him in the bathroom. Afterward, she ushers him into the shower to clean up. To his surprise, she joins him in the tub as she washes him. The closeness makes Bastien feel more drawn to Chloe, more so when she starts washing herself as well. At night, back at Louise's cottage, Bastien wakes up in the middle of the night and gets a glass of water. He suddenly hears something outside, so he goes out to the lake and finds Chloe bathing in the darkness. The next day, the families prepare for a picnic, but Chloe stays in her room, asleep. The others spend the day playing around until Chloe finally wakes up in the afternoon, taking her bike around. Seeing this, Bastien wonders about borrowing a bike from the cottage, so his father, Roman, fixes the bike. During this, they overhear Chloe arguing with someone over the phone. That night, Bastien asks his mother about the story of someone drowning in the lake. Violet asks her friend about this, but Louise insists that Chloe made up the story. One afternoon, as Bastien listens to his music by the port, a figure in a white cloth approaches him. When it reaches him, he panics and immediately pushes the figure into the lake. The figure doesn't move as it floats in the water, so Bastien tries calling it out. Suddenly, Chloe reveals herself from under the cloth, scolding Bastien for not trying to save her. She then invites him to a party, so he later helps her get ready for the event. As she searches for some clothes, Bastien can't help but look at her body. She then urges him to find something else to wear, even tossing him a shirt he can borrow. With no choice, Bastien changes into the shirt with her help. She then orders him to turn around while she changes clothes. To seem manly, he declares that he's seen a woman's body, but Chloe claims that he has to earn it before seeing hers. The two then grab another white cloth before heading out. During their walk, Chloe wonders if they'll be ghosts when they die. Bastien answers that they may not have a choice. The woman then shares that she believes ghosts don't know they're dead. They soon arrive at the party where Chloe offers her guest a drink. She also encourages him to find someone he likes, wondering what attracts him. Just then, Oliver finds them and leads them to the backyard where Stan and their friends are. The men start sharing questionable videos among themselves, and Stan even offers to let Bastien watch despite Chloe's protests. Despite not liking what he saw, Bastien pretends not to be bothered. Oliver then points out that he and Chloe look alike, so the woman starts treating her friend like a brother. As the night goes on, Chloe spots her ex-boyfriend Jackson with a new woman. This prompts her to drink more and accept Oliver's invitation to dance. She pulls Bastien along as they join the crowd dancing to the music. With Bastien wearing a ghost mask and being under the influence, he becomes confident and starts impressing the crowd with his moves. Soon, he gets tired of dancing, so he hangs back and watches Chloe play around with Oliver. Feeling a sense of jealousy, Bastien returns to the crowd but accidentally gets elbowed in the nose by one of the dancers. While his nose bleeds, he sees Oliver getting much closer to Chloe. To calm his emotions, Bastien walks out of the party and bites his hand, daring to make himself bleed to prove that he's strong. However, it doesn't work. He then finds a dead deer on the road, seemingly having been run over. Bastien ignores it and continues to make his way home. As he sleeps later, he wakes up to find that he got a bit too excited from his dream. He cleans up in the bathroom, but before he can get dressed, he hears Chloe arriving home. Hurriedly, he runs to his bed with only a blanket covering him before the woman enters the bedroom. He asks how the party went, so the woman shares that they stopped dancing shortly after he left. The neighbors then complained about the noise, so they had to end the night. Chloe also shares that she saw her ex-boyfriend there, prompting Bastien to ask why they broke up. She invites him over to her bed so they can talk without waking his brother, and Bastien carefully uses the blanket to keep himself covered. With him next to her, Chloe shares that Jackson broke up with her since she refused to do the things he asked for. Even then, he spread rumors that they'd been intimate already. Curious, Bastien asks if she's been with a man, and she says no. She heard that the first time makes them bleed, and she finds that disgusting. Bastien then shares that his brother's nose bleeds often, so he's used to blood. Chloe laughs, thinking that's not the same. As they decide to sleep, Bastien starts getting up, but Chloe asks him to stay, even cuddling with him. The following day, Chloe directs Bastien, who's dressed like a ghost, so she can take a creepy picture. They also attempt to bite their hands until they bleed to prove that it's possible, though they still can't do it. They later share their greatest fears. And when Bastien says that it's satisfying himself in front of his parents, Chloe laughs. She teases that she thought he feared water, and to prove that he's not afraid, he goes into the lake, with a woman daring him to go further and further. To encourage him, Chloe poses as if to reveal herself to him if he goes deeper into the lake. When Bastien goes further, however, he suddenly finds her running back to the woods, prompting him to go back to shore. To his dismay, he finds that Chloe's talking to Oliver. Because of this, he decides to go back home alone. Later on, Chloe returns and quickly changes clothes before crying in her bed. Hoping to make her feel better, Bastien fetches some ice cream for her. This lightens her mood a bit, so she shares that her biggest fear is not fitting in and being alone. Bastien assures her that she's not alone since she'll always have her ghost. He also admits that her fear is better than his, and Chloe comments that his fear is the worst she's heard of. To prove that his fear isn't that bad, Chloe starts satisfying herself before calling out to her mother. This makes Bastien feel awkward, and when he hears Louise coming up the stairs, he hides in the closet, not wanting to be caught watching Chloe that way. He hears that when Louise arrives, Chloe changes the topic and asks what's for dinner. This irritates her mother, so she threatens to serve a rat. After she leaves, Bastien steps out of the closet, and Chloe just laughs. At sundown, Chloe and the brothers start working on a puzzle when Brian and Oliver arrive. The two join them for dinner, though Bastien stays at the patio table, not wanting to see Chloe being close with the other man. Later, however, he hangs out with Oliver and Chloe as the woman shares the supposed ghost photo they took. Oliver wonders why she's into the ghost story since it's not real, but Chloe insists that she feels that it is. Still, Oliver thinks it's a bit childish to believe in a ghost story. This prompts Chloe to excuse herself to grab a drink, leaving the two men alone. Oliver uses the chance to advise Bastien to go to bed, but the younger man refuses, not wanting to leave Chloe alone with him. Oliver then brings up how Chloe seemed to have revealed herself to Bastien earlier, making him wonder if they've done it. Bastien lies that they had, and this makes Oliver praise him. Chloe returns with drinks and suggests holding a contest on who could bite themselves until they bleed. Later, Bastien washes blood from his hand as he'd apparently done the deed. As he gets ready for bed with Chloe, she admits that she doesn't want him to leave. Bastien shares the sentiment. Suddenly, Chloe turns off the lights, removes her shirt, and lets Bastien touch her. She then embraces him before allowing him to satisfy himself in front of her. Afterward, Chloe washes up and turns the lights on, giggling at the encounter with Bastien. This endears her further with a man, who ends up spending the night watching her sleep. The two spend the rest of the summer playing around together, developing a close bond. Soon, however, Bastien's parents discuss going back to the city the following day. During lunch, Chloe also receives a troubling message that makes her walk away from the table. Worried, Bastien follows her to the kitchen, but Chloe calls him a liar before rushing out. She takes her bike for a ride to clear her head and doesn't return until late at night. Hearing her arrive, Bastien pretends to sleep, only to find that Chloe just picked up her jacket before riding off again. This time, Bastien follows her to a bonfire where she is hanging out with her friends. Seeing him, Stan welcomes him to their hangout, then brings up the rumors that he'd slept with Chloe. This is apparently what made the woman angry at him, so upon noticing him there, Chloe avoids Bastien. Through the night, Bastien watches as Chloe gets closer to Oliver, making him jealous. The two eventually head to the woods, and Bastien gets worried about what'll happen between them. He tries to ignore this and just bonds with the rest, even trying out a smoke for the first time. Soon, daylight comes, marking the last day of Bastien's stay there. He goes to the lake where he finds Chloe kissing Oliver. Suddenly, one of the others asks Oliver if they can steal some wine from his father. Instead of just heading to his house, however, the others dare to swim across the lake to Brian's house. Bastien hesitates, but when the others urge him to follow, he cautiously tries swimming in the lake. However, he's too slow and can't keep up, eventually disappearing into the water. After some time, Violet and Roman pack up and bid Brian and Louise goodbye. Before returning to the city, they visit the other side of the lake with Titi, where there's a memorial for Bastien, who became the kid who drowned in the lake in Chloe's story. Like in her story, Bastien's ghost struggles to accept that he's already dead. He desperately runs back to Chloe's home, where he finds the woman still mourning him. Bastien calls to her, and after a while, Chloe looks back, seemingly hearing the boy who made her ghost stories finally come true.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.